Is the longest movie in the Conjuring franchise worth 135 minutes of your time? We think they mostly got it right with Last Rites, and we're here to tell you why. Warning, major spoilers ahead. In the opening scene of the movie, we're given a glimpse of Ed and Lorraine Warren as they deal with their first paranormal investigation back in 1964. They're very green at this point, so green that they decide it isn't a bad idea whatsoever to go poking around a demon-infested curiosity shop when Lorraine is in the final stages of pregnancy. Good job, guys. After touching a creepy antique mirror, Lorraine has a disturbing vision where she sees both a demonic entity and her unborn child. This, of course, sends her into labor, and a nail-biting drive to the hospital ensues. The demon in question then makes a terrifying appearance in the operating room, which results in the baby being stillborn. But it's fine though. After an agonizing minute of dread and prayer, baby Judy miraculously takes her first breath and begins to cry. Whew. After this, they decide to abandon the case and never return.
We were young. We were scared. We ran away.
A handful of the Conjuring movies start out with the Warrens carrying out an investigation, but this opening carries a bit more weight than any of the others. At this point in the franchise, we've all come to know this extremely fictionalized version of the Warrens quite well. Just like when you read a novel or a series of novels, you become attached to the characters over time, especially if they're as likable as the film version of the Warrens. Seeing them in real peril at the onset of their controversial careers hits hard in all the right ways and makes for some solid opening sequence suspense, even though we all know that Judy survives. Fast forward to 1986, and we see that Judy, who has the same clairvoyant powers as her mother, is all grown up. So grown up, in fact, that she's getting married to a friendly ex-cop named Tony. It's a bittersweet thing for Ed and Lorraine, but ultimately they're happy that their daughter is happy. Plus, moving forward with life is their MO now. Ed's getting older and his health is starting to fail him, so they decided to stop doing paranormal investigations altogether. From this point on, they plan to just do lecture circuits or maybe write a book about their many experiences, and they really try to stick to this. When they're told about yet another family in need of their services, the Smurls, who live in Pennsylvania, they initially bail without even asking about what's going on. Little do they know, the Smurls are having a pretty horrible time, all because of, yep, you guessed it, that creepy mirror Ed and Lorraine encountered during their very first investigation all those years ago. How convenient that they randomly stumble across it at a sale. They've got multiple entities trolling them in all kinds of terrifying ways. And it's made clear early on that no one besides the Warrens is going to be able to help them rid their house of this evil. It's not until Judy experiences a sequence of increasingly disturbing visions and drives to Pennsylvania herself to help the family that Ed and Lorraine are reluctantly pulled back into the action. The whole setup adds some legit personal tension to the story. In some ways, it harkens back to the initial conflict in The Conjuring 2, which is that Lorraine has a premonition of Ed's death in the beginning and is fearful of their work resulting in his untimely demise. This time around, both Ed and Judy are in serious danger, especially Judy. And Lorraine realizes this a little too late. Once they get down to business, it doesn't take them long to figure out what's really going on. The same demon they encountered on the day of Judy's birth is still haunting that pesky mirror and has been waiting patiently to finish what it started.
Ed, there's an evil here. Something I've felt before.
And it turns out it's been using 3 spirits like puppets to troll everyone throughout the movie, much like how Valak controlled the old man's spirit in The Conjuring 2. Things get especially real when the demon manages to briefly possess Judy and causes Ed to have another heart attack, or at least an almost heart attack. But of course, they all find a way, with the help of Judy's fiancé Tony, to band together and banish the demon back to hell once and for all. After it's all over, we're told that the Smurls keep living in the house for years after the incident and become a stronger family as a result of their struggles. Judy and Tony get married, and Ed and Lorraine happily retire. Lorraine also tells Ed that she's had a heartwarming vision of their future, one where they grow old together and see Judy and Tony raise their own family. Of course, we aren't surprised that Last Rites ends this way. The simple overarching theme of the importance of family is the emotional heart of the entire Conjuring franchise. That being said, we think this final confrontation, along with its aftermath, speaks to that theme in a resonating way. We've all become pretty attached to the Warrens by this point in the franchise, so it's definitely satisfying to see them pull together in the end and face evil as an entire family. We're not saying it's perfect though. Like everyone else, we definitely have some criticisms. Okay, first things first. A common criticism of Last Rites is that it just isn't as scary as it should be, especially for what seems to be the final installment of the franchise, at least for now. Scares are certainly peppered throughout, but many of them are used to build dread rather than make you jump halfway out of your seat. We can honestly only think of a few times that we flinched and sprouted goosebumps, and none of those moments even came close to Bathsheba jumping down from the armoire in the OG Conjuring or any of Valak's iconic moments. But the thing is, longtime fans of horror movies, like us and probably many of you, are just hard to scare. We've seen it all at this point, so it would pretty much take actually experiencing a demonic possession scenario in real life to knock our socks off. That being said, we as horror fans need to at least somewhat acknowledge our own numbness and just enjoy a scary movie once in a while, even if it isn't as scary as the exorcism of Emily Rose was the first time we saw it back in the day. If not for our current miserable selves, we should at least do it for our own inner children, right? It's far too easy for a horror movie to lean too far in the other direction and sacrifice all nuance and acts of storytelling for the sake of cheap screams. And we know the folks behind the Conjuring franchise aren't about that. And seriously, one of the strongest aspects of pretty much every Conjuring movie is the masterful use of dread. Think of how weak the OG movie would have been without all of that build-up in the first half. Can't just have Bathsheba barf into Carolyn's mouth in the first 5 minutes. A lot of the time, big scares don't pay off whatsoever if there isn't a steady increase of terror beforehand. So while we do admit that Last Rites didn't shake us to our core at any point, we still give director Michael Chavez and the gang props for trying their best to achieve the ever-elusive balance needed to make a horror movie great instead of forgettable, like so many others are. One unforgettable scare in particular has everyone talking. The scene where Judy ends up facing the Annabelle doll and it morphs into a giant version of itself and chases her down a dark hallway. A lot of people loved this scene, even if they didn't love the movie as a whole. We, on the other hand, had a nuanced opinion about it. Yes, it's most certainly a rad scene. Won't argue with anyone about that. But also, like the Crooked Man in The Conjuring 2, it almost took us out of the movie a bit.
There was the Crooked Man.
To be honest, both of these scenes almost remind us of Pennywise tricks in the It movies. The demon is terrorizing her by acting as a manifestation of her fear of the doll. Yes, we get that Valak appearing as a nun is basically the same thing, but the Crooked Man and the mutated Annabelle doll just don't have the same effect. Not for us, anyway. We're not saying we didn't enjoy the scene, we definitely did. And we don't blame them whatsoever for awarding Annabelle one more memorable scene to cap things off. It's just that it felt like a stylistic departure from the rest of the film. Plus, it's also weird how it happens in the finale when the demon is basically through playing its games. Speaking of the finale, we have some thoughts about Judy's possession. While terrifying in theory, it was definitely a bit of a letdown. Not to keep referring back to the OG movie, but we kinda have to. Carolyn's possession is one of the most disturbing possession scenes in all of horror movie history. The entire end sequence where she chases after her own daughter with a pair of scissors underneath the house is premium nightmare fuel. Judy's possession, on the other hand, is almost over before it even begins. Yeah, she attacks the family dog, which is more unforgivable than anything else a Conjuring demon has ever done, in our opinion, and almost kills Ed. But other than that, it's just kind of meh. It doesn't even compare to Ed's possession scene in The Devil Made Me Do It, which has an even more serious emotional implication than Carolyn's. Considering how the demon has been waiting more than 2 decades, in human time anyway, to get its hands on Judy, you'd think it would want to have a little bit more fun with her before doing the deed, right?
We've been waiting so patiently for you.
So yeah, this aspect of the finale left us wanting a whole lot more. And that leads us to the biggest sticking point for critics and moviegoers alike, the demon itself, which you may have noticed hasn't been named thus far in the video. That's because, well, it doesn't have one. At first, we thought it was Malthus, the demon that has long been attached to Annabelle. This would make sense since it trolls Judy with the doll. But nope, it's its own thing, and it simply doesn't have a name like Malthus or Valak. For many people, this is a huge bummer, being that we've gotten so used to the Warrens facing off against demons with specific identities, ones that are rooted in real-life biblical lore. Many see it as a weird choice to opt for such a mysterious evil entity. This is supposed to be the final fictional showdown for the Warrens. Yes, we know this wasn't the real Warrens' final case, so why skimp on tasty demon deeds?
Something's changed. Something's different.
Call us Conjuring apologists if you want to, but we think it's fine that the demon is nameless. That's kind of the entire point within the context of the movie, isn't it? Ed and Lorraine were noobs when they first encountered it. They ran away and didn't see it again for more than 2 decades. They have no idea who it is. And isn't it true what they say? As a species, we fear the unknown. Sometimes it's scarier when you don't know your enemy or why they want what they want. So what's our final verdict? We think that Last Rites, while certainly not perfect by any means, is a fine final installment. The truth is that the rising prominence of elevated horror movies over the past decade or so has forever changed the genre's landscape. More people are watching horror movies than ever before, and with that comes a wider and more nuanced range of expectations. Horror movies used to just be either good or bad. Very few fell in that weird purgatorial in-between state of, it was fine but could have been better. Nowadays, we analyze them in the same way we might analyze a flick that's up for an Oscar, which can often do movies like Rites a terrible disservice. The important thing to remember is that the Conjuring movies have never tried to be something that they're not. They're stylish, well-made horror flicks that appeal to a large audience. Well, everything besides A Curse of La Llorona. That movie is straight trash, and we don't blame anyone for just shutting it out of their minds and pretending it doesn't exist. Anyway, when viewed through that lens, Rites is a perfectly enjoyable movie, and seriously, the numbers don't lie. It's the highest-grossing horror franchise to date for a reason. That leads us to the final question. What comes next for the Conjuring universe? Like we've alluded to a few times in this video, this alleged final installment probably isn't going to be the last. We're still very much entrenched in the era of reboots and sequels, after all, and we know the overlords in Hollywood aren't going to just let an immensely profitable thing fade into the background. If we had to guess, we're probably going to see more of Judy in the future, considering how she's just as clairvoyant as her mother and only in her early 20s when the credits roll. In real life, Judy and her husband Tony run the same paranormal investigation company that Ed and Lorraine established, the New England Society for Psychic Research, and they pretty much do exactly what Judy's parents did: travel around to investigate paranormal activity, do interviews, and hold panels at conventions. Though they didn't take up the mantle until later in life, they've still probably amassed a pretty sizable trove of cases for James Wan and the gang to sift through for inspiration. And being that Judy has been largely supportive of the Conjuring movies, we assume she'll be happy to let them poke around in their case files. Yes, it goes without saying that Wan and whoever else is involved with these potential future installments will probably continue to take considerable creative liberties with Judy and Tony's stories. But so be it. No one ever said these were documentaries. As horror junkies, we're always happy to place our fingers on the Hollywood Ouija board and welcome more demons into our lives.